As we get closer and closer to Christmas, my friends, a commonly asked question is, are you ready for Christmas? And now that I've asked that question, my friends, your minds are going to go way out. Bring it back. Come on. Because that involves a big answer, doesn't it, my friends? But that's what St. John the Baptist is doing with the people of his time, trying to get them. He's saying, prepare the way. Are you ready? And what he's talking about, my friends, in these valleys and roads and things like that, when a tetrarch or a Pontius Pilate or a king or emperor, anyone would come to a town, they would always send somebody out before them to make sure that the roads are accessible and easy to travel with. And there's no obstacles. There's no obstacles. No obstacles when they were in the town itself. That's what their job, to remove all that, to make that smooth so that person of royalty can be able to get there in a good way. Right? That's what he's talking about here. And those people know exactly what he was talking about. He's clearing the obstacles so the emperor could come. And he's saying, the king is coming, you need to remove the obstacles of your heart, right? And those people know it, and that's what the reference is to these next 2 weeks of Easter, or Christmas, I mean. You know, my friends, I was reading an article this past week. It was a man that was been doing this list for 30 years, and I thought it was quite interesting what he did. He called it his refinement list. His refinement list. His name was Frank, and he had the youngest grandson was also named after him, called Frankie. And he's working on this list the first Sunday of Advent, and his grandson comes in and he goes, "What's that, Pop?" He goes, "That is a Christmas list." He said, "No, not really." He said, "Is it the list, the things that you want?" He said, "No, not really." He said, "Is it the list that you're going to give other people?" And at this point, this young boy, who's 5, wished he could read, because that's what he thought it was, the list that he wants to see what's on that, He said, "No, it's not that kind of list either." And Frank, the older Frank, is trying to say to himself, how does it tell a 5-year-old boy what this list actually was? It was a list of the stuff that he's trying to get rid of for Christmas. And on it with his anger at his wife and things he shouldn't have watched, his selfishness. But in some of those, he said, wanting too much for myself. But in the last line of that, and he did tell his grandson this, he said, "I figured the more things I get rid of, the more I'll be able to rejoice in the good things that God gives us." Now, my friends, when we make lists like that, and I think it's a great idea to do it, and I think everybody in this church needs to do that, if we do that, we need to be honest. It's very easy for us to make a list for your spouse or your kids, because that's easy, isn't it? You can see their faults. We're very good at that. We can see people's faults and weaknesses very clearly. Sometimes it's blurred when it comes to ourselves, isn't it? There was a boy that was in 6th grade, and he read a little article or something in a magazine or on the internet or something, that if you eat garlic, it can make you smarter. So he tells his best friend this. So the night they were together, he and his buddy split a clove of garlic. Then in the morning, they said they're going to eat some for breakfast and then for lunch. So they each ate some of this clove of garlic for breakfast, and then at lunch they split another clove or something like this. By now, things were starting to happen in the classroom, my friends. The teacher was saying, "What have you guys been eating?" "Oh, not much." And finally they've admitted to the teacher that they were eating garlic, and she was trying to tell them that, look, you're smelling up the classroom, and she even wrote a note to the mother. But after school, they blew in each other's face, and they said to each other, "We can't smell garlic." Sure, you eat garlic, you can't smell it, can you? But everybody else can. But everybody else can. And that's the sense we have to be careful with, my friends. We eat garlic, we can't smell it. But we need to. We need to be aware of it, my friends, because when we eat garlic, we impact the people around us, don't we? We really do. And it's the same with our refinement list. How we act, how we talk affects people around us. And sometimes we just got to stop eating garlic, don't we? We really do. There was a true story that a woman told me when I was hearing confessions at the women's conference in McDevitt, and I didn't remember any of this. It was back in my old parish, and a woman apparently called me, and she said, and I remember the boy, I do remember that. She called me about her son who was 10 years old. And you know, my friends, I've never seen a boy like this. He was incredibly devout. It was amazing, the questions that this 10-year-old boy was asking and how he was acting. And the mother didn't go to church. The dad both of them were Catholic, or at least culturally, and baptized. The mom was a little more interested, but not much. The dad had wanted nothing to do with it all. So she was baffled by this, how this boy could be religious all of a sudden. That was the one part of the conversation. And then the other part of the conversation was she had a whole litany of gripes and complaints about the church, you know? And she's telling me this one thing after another, and the last thing on her list was confession. Oh my friends, she wanted nothing to do with confession, okay? Now, if any of you have been to Selinsgrove or Susquehanna University, it sits on that main avenue there. And then to the right of it, there's another street. And then there's another main street about a mile down. These run parallel. In between the two is Selinsgrove School District, which has the elementary school, the middle school, and high school all in the same area. It fills up this mile space, square, and then the athletic fields are all there too. The church sits right in the border between the college and the school, so it's a really great location up there. Well, anyway, she was picking up her son who was doing an after-school event, and she said she came into the church to pray. She came and sat on the very back pew. Of course, nobody was in there, and she was praying for about 10, 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, somebody comes into the church and sits down. And she thought, sit a couple feet away from her. And then a few minutes after that, somebody else sits down. And by now she's like, really? We have a whole church. 2 people come sit down right next to me. Seriously? So she's starting to get frustrated, A couple minutes later, another one sits on the other side. So now there's 3 people within 10 feet. And she's starting to smoke, my friends. She said there was like smoke coming out of my ears. I came in to pray, at least try to deal with some of the stuff with the church, and 3 people come walking in and sit next to me. All of a sudden, this woman that was sitting here gets up and leaves, and she says, thankfully. And then a couple minutes pass by, and woman, or the man, I'm not even sure if it was a man or woman, goes like that into her shoulder and says to her, you're next. And she's thinking, next for what? Do you know what was going on, my friends? It's the confession line. Just like I hear on Thursday nights, and I'll tell you at the end of Mass from 4:30 to 6, it was the same thing. She's in line with confession. And she said to the woman next to her, I'm really not ready yet. But my friends, she waited to the end of the line, and I think she said she waited about an hour. And she went in. And I said to her, was it a good experience for you? And you know what she said to me? She said, it was the best thing I ever did, Father. It was the best thing I ever did. My friends, refinement lists aren't easy, but they're good. Going to confession is not always easy, but it's a good thing, my friends. It's a good thing. And this Advent, it may be the best thing that you ever did. God bless you.